have a data model that allows us to delete, to update, to find, create, all the CRUD operations you would expect. These are probably the minimal set that we might want. We might add many others. So let's now play around with the capability of maybe being able to relate a user with other things, right? Maybe a section. Let's enroll a user in a section. So let's create now a different data model. Right? So let's here in a different model we can say maybe create another directory for sections. Right? And in here again, let's start off with creating a schema for it. So this might be section.schema.server.js, and that section might have things such as how many seats are available, the name of the section, for what course is this, things like that, right? So again, let's do something. Oops. Here, const. We'll need mongoose here. Mongoose require mongoose. Const, and this will be we'll probably just module.exports, and we'll just export mongoose.schema. We'll export the schema right away. No need to declare a variable and then export that variable, right? We can just export whatever mongoose schema returns, right? So this might be might have a title, and which is a string. It might have how many seats are available, and this might be a number, and maybe with a default. With a default to 49, right below 50. And what else might we have here? And then perhaps the collection we want to store it in here. So this might be collection in section. All right. Let's create just a minimal CRUD, maybe just to create a section or two. All right. Let's do that. So we have the schema. Now let's do the model here. So this would be section.model.server.js, and we'll need the schema. So let's load the schema. Well, we'll need mongoose. Mongoose require mongoose, and we'll need also the schema we just created. So const user schema require the schema that we have here. Oh, not user schema, the section schema. So this would be section schema. Section schema. Okay. And then now finally we can create the model itself. So section model. This will be mongoose dot model, and this will be section model with the section schema. All right, and any CRUD operation that we might want, right? So let's just maybe do just a create. All right. So this will be create section that takes as argument a section object, and then it just instantiates it. So this will be section model dot create the section. That's it. Let's just leave that for now, right? And let's expose this. So we'll do module.exports, an API that exports the create section. There we go. Right, so from outside, we should be able to create these sections. Let's try it out. Let's just play around with it in the mongoose tests. So let's not delete any other users. Let's load our const user section. Section model will require the models section and then section model. There we go. And let's create just a simple section, right? So this will be something like const section 1, and this will be the title, might be section 1, section 1, and seats, we'll take the default seats, and we can create it. So this will be section model, dot create a section and the section 1. All right, so let's try this. Let's run it. All right, so presumably it created it. I didn't go fetch it. I didn't do any find or anything. So if we go back to the database and we do a show collections, notice that now we have section, right? We only had users before, but now we have sections. So we can say db.section.find and then pretty. And indeed, now we only just have one section. All right, excellent. So what we'd like to be able to do is say, well, this particular user is enrolled in this particular section. Right? And there might be multiple sections that this user is enrolled in. And so there's a couple of ways of doing it. One of the ways that we can do it, well, let me comment this out. One way that we can do it is perhaps we could do it both ways. We could say we can either have the user keep track of the sections that the user is enrolled, or the section can keep track of the users that are enrolled in that section, or we can do it both ways, right? They both keep track of each other, or we can have an enrollment additional model, right, that points to both. So Mongoose gives lots of ideas, lots of different ways of doing it, right? Each one with its own pros and cons, and it all depends on the use cases of how somebody's going to use this application. You might want to ask: is it a requirement that a student or a user be able to browse through the sections that they are enrolled in? Maybe that's a very valid use case, right? In that sense, it would be very convenient if the user object contained a sections array with all the sections listed right there. That would be very convenient. Yes? But you can ask the other way around. Is it a requirement that given a section, I would like to know all the students enrolled in that section? That might also be a very valid use case, right? In that sense, it would be very, very convenient if all the users that are enrolled in the section might be listed right in a field called users or students, right, as an array of users. So that might also be convenient. It is somewhat inconvenient if both use cases are required. If both of them are required, then it puts a burden on us that we have to maintain both arrays, right? Because we would have to, if somebody enrolls in a section, we have to update the users array, right? The user.sections array. But we also have to update the section.students array. That's very inconvenient, having to do two inserts, right, for representing one piece of information, right? We have redundancy, right? And that could cause us to have inconsistency. What if a user unenrolls and we remember to remove the section from the user sections array, but we somehow forget, right, to remove the user from the sections array, right? That'd be inconsistent, because if we ask the user sees, oh, I'm not enrolled in that section. But if we ask the section, the user is still in there. Yes? And that's very, very common. That happens to us every time we go and use all sorts of applications, and we see that the state doesn't match. I've just added something, and then it's not there anymore, right? Or we're trying to enroll in a course. It has 20 seats available. This happens on web dev all the time. They're available, and when you're about to enroll, they're all gone. Right? Well, didn't you just say there was 50 seats available, and now there's all gone? What is this? This inconsistency of what one thing says, and what this is the kind of things we like to avoid. And so in that case, if both use cases are valid, perhaps we would want to instead have an enrollments model where we represent it only once. That would say, hey, that student is enrolled in that section. so that if we unenroll, there's only one place we have to remove. Make sense? Again, it depends, which way you go depends on the use cases that you need to, the requirements in your database, your requirements on your project. Okay, so let's go with something simple. Let's go with just the user, the student can keep track of the sections that they are enrolled in. Okay, so if we go to user model, in the schema, we would like to represent all the sections that this student is enrolled in. How do we do that? How do we capture that here? Well, we know that we're going to need a field called sections, right? That's going to keep track of all the sections that this student is enrolled in. We know it's an array. It's an array of things. Okay? We could just say it's an array of strings, and that would be okay. Right? We just have to make sure that whatever we push into this array are the IDs of all the sections. Right? And we can just be cognizant of the fact that, hey, that string in there represents the IDs of all the sections. And this would be okay. Right? The caveat here is that what if I retrieve the user and now I only have the ID of the section. If I want to have it all in one single page, I would need to first retrieve the user. Now I have presumably the array of all the sections. Now I need to go and fetch each one of those sections individually, right? This would be a very expensive query. I get all the username, first name, last name, all this, and now I have to iterate over this array and retrieve each one of the sections. This would be a very, very expensive query for a very simple page. Yes? Okay? So that's what this would cost me to do. Right? I would have to implement all that logic. Right? I would have to go and fetch all those. So I don't want to do that. Instead, I'm going to use one of Mongoose's properties, right, that allows us to have Mongoose do this for us, right? It says, hey, Mongoose, this is not just any plain old string. It's actually an ID that references something that's actually in the database, okay? And that opens up a whole bunch of really cool features, such as, hey, give me the user. Oh, and by the way, that array of strings that you have there, right? Hey, convert them into actual objects for me. Go and fetch them for me, right? And populate them for me. Let's see how we do that. All right, these sections, instead of just being a plain old string, which would have worked, but would have put a lot of burden on us, instead, this is going to be the type. It's an object. These objects that are going to be in here, they're going to be of type mongoose dot, bless you, schema dot types dot object ID. These are going to be primary keys that are going to be stored in here. Actual primary keys, right? And so that's what we're going to store in there, actual primary keys. The primary key of the sections are going to be stored in here. So wait a minute, but wasn't a string enough to do that? Yes, a string would have been enough. A string would have been enough. But this, like this, it allows me to declare that this object ID references a section model. References a section model. Where have we seen that before? We have seen it when we were declaring the section model. See that? We declared sections, right, as a section model. Right? So now it knows that these IDs reference objects in the database that are locally represented, right, in Mongoose as section models. Right? Okay? And this will allow us to do some really, really cool things. Right? So we're still just going to store strings in there. They're just going to be strings. Right? But they're going to be interpreted as foreign keys that can be instantiated as user models, as section models. Okay, let's take a look at that. This, right? Okay, so we added that, and so let's try and retrieve all the users. Where is it? Retrieve all the users. What did I do with find all users? Well, let's do it again. Let's see. Let's do here user model dot find all users, and this is then, and here are all the users, and let's just display them. Console log users. All right, so let's run this. Okay, we still have Alice and Dan, right? We still have that. Excellent. All right, so let's enroll a couple of folks in here, right? Let's enroll a couple of folks. So let's go back to the user model, and let's say here that we want to enroll somebody. We're going to say enroll user. This will be a user ID, meaning I want to enroll somebody. I want to enroll somebody into some other section ID. So what this is saying is this particular user, I want to enroll them in this section. Right? So what I need to do is first find the user. First retrieve the user. Very much like in JPA, right? In JPA, if you want to modify something, you first have to find that thing, right? And then you need to modify it. And if you change something, you need to save it back. If you don't save it, any changes you make to the object are not saved in the database, right? They're only saved in RAM, right, in the CPU. Same thing here, right? So this is going to be a couple of steps. So this is going to be user model dot find, right? So that's find find one. And this will be the one that has the find by ID, I guess. Find by ID, the user ID. And that's going to return to me the actual user object. Okay? And like JPA, this is not any user object. In JPA, when you get something from the database, it's actually an object that wraps around your object. Right? It's a smart object. It's an object that keeps track of whether any fields are dirty, right? So that it can keep track and make sure that if you change something and you call save on it, right, that it knows that it needs to update a couple of things in the database. So same thing here. This user is not any JSON object. It's not just any JSON object. It's an object that can keep track of itself, right? If anything changes, if I do anything to it, it knows about it. All right. So what do I want to do with this user? So basically, I want to be able to do a user. I want to put. Notice that the user now has a sections, right? Has sections, doesn't it? In the schema has sections. So I want to put in that sections. I want to push in here. It's an array, right? I can push the section ID that was passed in as an argument. I'm going to push that, right? Right. Now that I've pushed it, I've modified it in RAM. I need to save it back into the database. Right? And I can just do that using user.save. User.save. So notice, right, it's not a JSON object. It's not just any JSON object. It's now an object that has an API, right? Has functions like save. Save yourself. Go back in the database and save yourself. Store yourself back in the database. Okay. Notice that this enrollment user is still waiting for something to come back, right? So this is what's going to return. I'm going to return this save. Return this save. That's the promise that's going to go back all the way up from the enroll user. Okay. All right. Excellent. So let's try it out. Let's see. We have in the database we have that section, and what else we have? Let's also see all the users, right? We have all the users. Notice that nobody's enrolled in anything. So let's enroll Alice in section 1. So Alice is that ID. So let's do that, right? From our test here. our test. Let's comment that out for a second. Okay, we're going to enroll. We're going to say user model that enroll. Oh, I didn't expose that, did I? Let's expose it. So this is enroll user. Enroll user. So user model dot enroll user. So we're going to enroll. Let's see. Who do I enroll? Alice. So Alice right there. And the section, oh, the section, that's the section. There it is, this section. Copy. Come back here. Enroll in that section. Okay? We're going to enroll there. All right, let's try it out. Let's run this. Okay, it didn't blow up. That's good. Let's go back to the database. And let's notice now that Alice has sections. See that? The sections of Alice has an object ID, and that ID is actually the ID of the section that they're enrolled in. That's the only thing that it's there. It's just a plain old string, basically. All right, is there. It doesn't have the actual object. All right? It doesn't actually have the object. So now, if I want to retrieve the user, if I want to retrieve the user, and I run this, notice that we get all the users, but we have Dan Brown is not enrolled in anywhere, right? Notice that for Alice we have the sections array has the value of the section that they're enrolled in. See that? Right? I only have the foreign key. That's all I have. That's all I have. Okay. Well, in the find all users here, this find, I can actually make a couple of really cool things happen. Right? Instead of just saying find, right, I can add some of the modifiers. Remember, we have sort, right? We have what else we have? We have pretty. We have limit. Right? One of the coolest modifiers is populate. Right? Populate. Okay. Populate says I want the original object. I want to give the original object, but I know there's a field in there that references other things. There's a field in there that references other things. Okay? Well, I don't just want the reference. I want the actual object that that thing references. Okay? I don't just want the ID. I want the actual object. Right? Go fetch it for me. It's almost what we would do in a relational database as a join, isn't it? Right? We have this object that is referencing that other object. I want to go fetch things from that other object and bring them in. Right? It's like a join, right? And MongoDB does not support that, right? This is purely a mongoose syntactic sugar, right? So that you don't have to go here and then go over there, right? You could do this, right? You could just grab the ID and then iterate over that array and go fetch all those sections, right? But that would be very expensive. Here, Mongoose allows you to do that. So we can say populate sections. Right? Populate the sections. And then execute. Execute. Right? Execute allows you to you can put several transformations, several modifiers, right? One after another. Populate, then sort, then limit, then do this, then a whole bunch of other things, all sorts of transformations, right? They all get compiled, right? And then you can once you're done, you say execute the transformation. Right? All right, so let's try it out. All right, so it didn't know how to print that object, but notice that it's an object now, right? It's not just the ID; it's an object. We can iterate over it. Notice that over here, where we're using it, right here, console. Instead of console.user, let's try iterating over it. We can say users. Well, let's just say for var I 0 and I less than users.length, and then say I plus plus, and then we can say console.log, and let's print out the users. Let's grab one of the users. So var user is user sub I, and let's print this out. We can say user dot username, yes, and then followed by the user dot. Well, we have sections, so let's print out the sections. Print out the sections. Okay. All right, there it is. Notice that. There we go. See, Alice? Look at the array. The array no longer just contains the ID. See that? It actually contains the actual section object, right, with all its glory, right? The ID, the seats, the title, right? Everything is here, right? The array only includes only one object, but if it were many objects, all the sections, right? We could iterate over that, right? We can say we could iterate over that and say we could say, you know, for var s 0 s less than user sections, you know, s plus plus, and iterate over the sections, right? And display the sections sub s dot title, right? And so we can print all the sections that this particular student is enrolled in. Okay. Right. There it is. Right. So Alice. Oh wait. Was it? What did I do here? Is it title? User sections. Oh, user sections length. Sorry. There, right? So we have Alice, and then all of the sections for Alice, and then Dan's all sections under Dan. See that? Right. That's pretty cool, right? That you can. Instead of you having to iterate over all these things, you can ask Mongoose to do all this, right? To fill in, right, and populate all this embedded objects in there, right? Pretty cool.